welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation, along with...
CJ Lou from the Fired Up with CJ show.
If you've ever wondered how to fit it all in, get everything done, or take your ideas from the drawing board to the printing press, then do we have the actionable show for you. Today we'll talk about getting things done, what it takes, how to do it, why it's not all about discipline, and what are the most important steps you need to take. That plus we'll talk about the power of carrots, decluttering magic, shrinking bicycles, musical chairs, Lake, where's the lake, why less time is best, and the magical power of hammocks. So welcome to the show, CJ. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to shine.
Woohoo! So before we dive right in, do you feel like you've got enough time lately to get everything done?
I think so. I'm kind of squandering my time and doing, I don't even know. At the end of the day, I'm like, what have I even done? I'm not even sure. Which is, I think, actually a problem itself, too, right? Because I'm not accomplishing the things that I have done because it's not work. You know, some of the things have been related to my son in college, prep, and helping him with some of it. And so some of it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm not getting my work done. But it is stuff that needs to be done anyways. And I don't know. So that, how about you? So that's my story is, how do I actually change and appreciate what I have done versus trying to cram more in?
Well, it's interesting. Two thoughts. First off, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is we're interviewing Scott Belsky later today on making things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the concepts that he talks about is that everything is a project and that there's a real blur, as maybe there should be today, between business and not business. Mm-hmm. And so that time, I know Jessica's really struggled with this in the past about feeling like I didn't get anything done. When she actually got a lot done, it wasn't just things that you just check off as, well, this is an Inspire Nation task, this is an Inspire Nation task. But those things like taking care of your son, those are projects. And so you are getting stuff done.
Right. Yeah, like I did a Feldenkrais class yesterday because I'm having problems with my lower back and my neck. And it's like that doesn't register in my mind as getting anything done. Even though it is getting, like you said, getting something done that's important for my overall well-being.
It's interesting when we have to rationalize or justify those
Yeah.
things to ourselves. I need to get the Feldenkrais because that's going to help release my back and that's going to allow me to get work done. Not I don't feel so good, I want to feel better.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm very task-driven, sadly, very goal-oriented. So it's like, I need to get my back better versus like, oh, my poor back. Maybe give it a little bit of love today. I'd rather be the latter than the former, but
Well,
so it is.
it's kind of good that we're talking about it because I think you are more systems oriented than me.
I'm
Although
very systems-oriented, yeah.
I was talking with Jessica about it this morning because we have a lot to quote get done right now, setting up our program and such. And reading Scott Belsky's book again, he was talking about how the successful creators out there aren't the ones who are the best creators. You can have, he calls it the 100 times zero. 100 meaning if you're 100 on the scale of 0 to 100 in creativity and you're 0 on the scale of organization, 100 times 0 equals 0. Much better to be 50% creative and then times 2, meaning 2 on a scale of 0 to 100 on organization, and you get 100 times the stuff done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was saying in Inspire Nation, we're cranking. We have a very good system for organization. To take things to a next level, we need to look at how we can take those organizational skills and carry those over into other areas of our life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it takes, I think I've talked to you about a couple months ago. I'm actually, I resell this product called Predictive Index, and it's a behavioral assessment test. And one of the attributes that it measures is formality. And that's basically if you need to actually have goals, process, and systems, and clear expectations before you do anything. Because there's some people who just go with the flow and they're kind of like, hey, you know what? I actually hate someone telling me what to do and when to do it because it feels like I have no freedom when someone does that. And I actually probably equally dislike when someone doesn't have clarity with where they're going or what they want me to do or when they need to get it done, it makes me feel uncomfortable. So I think that there are two different types of behaviors or fundamental need. Like someone has a need for freedom and someone has a need for structure. And if you and I think if you understand that at a fundamental level, that's the tension that's happening, I think it helps in implementing any of these techniques.
I think it helps. I think there's another important component, or maybe it's the same thing said a different way, which is I think we still need. I'm thinking about because I've certainly been that go with the flow, see how things go, get it done. I think though to actually implement, everybody, even the most crazy creative creator, needs a certain amount of um, either it's a regularity to the process. The regularity to the process even could be the crazy deadline to get it done, but you need some sort of structure in order to take the ideas that you've created and actually turn them into something.
Yeah, the other it's funny that you mentioned that because uh, the other thing that I'm trained on is Myers Briggs, and they have a judger and perceiver. That's their model and how they talk about it, and the gal who taught the class said that this is how someone who the judger is like they've got the like so let's say that I have something due next Friday. I'll probably have it pretty much as a judger. I would actually have it pretty much done on Wednesday to Thursday, and I'd be using Thursday to kind of final touches, make it a little bit better. My husband is a perceiver, so he would actually and I saw him actually work in progress. I saw him working delivering this workshop that he was doing, and he would listen to the internet and saw something interesting, and that led him to something else, and then he would look at that, and then he started reading a book, and then he'd go over here, and then I'm like, are you ever going to get your slides done? He's like, I'm getting them done. And by that time I would have had an outline, and then after building the outline I would have filled out the outline, and I'd make sure that the outline flowed, and then he was like, listen to a book on tape, and then I mean it went like this and he traveled like in the if this is the world, he traveled like this space, right?
Mm-hmm.
He traveled all over the place, and he got the product done, and it was a really good work product on the date, but I would have just taken a straight line there. So I think that there are merits to either approach too, right? Like his approach, he's actually traversed the whole a much larger territory and
Yeah.
explored and had a creative exploration, and I had structure, discipline, and I was efficient. So you're both getting things done, I think.
Did he have actionable steps or certain triggers that helped him to know, okay, by this point, I'm going to get things done, or certain tripwires in place?
Yes, he has a wife that says, okay, so you have this deadline. So when are you going to have the first draft? And he's like, well, I think I've planned on the first draft on, let's say it's Friday. On Wednesday, I'll have a first draft. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, so then how? And then on Wednesday, I see him. I'm like, is the first draft done? And he's like, yep. And he'll say, but I'm thinking about like, I'm like, you're adding new stuff? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I thought you had the first draft done. Why are you adding new stuff? He's like, I can't help it. And actually, you know what happened on the day? He memorized the whole thing. He like had the whole thing kind of organized. And literally the night before, he couldn't go to sleep, and he changed it yet one more time because he had another idea that was just critical to get in there. So I think it's actually developing yourself like these little mini milestones in order
Mm-hmm.
to get to the deadline. Because I think he was able to meet those mini deadlines, but then he can flow within a self-imposed mini deadline.
Yeah.
Because I'd say, when do you want to get the first draft? I didn't say you should get the first draft done on Wednesday if you want it done on Friday, because that's my way. I just like, when do you want to? And it's like Wednesday.
And if you ask a question, you're much just from a coaching perspective, you ask a question, it makes somebody think and come up with something that's theirs, that they take ownership. If you go and implant your idea on them, it's
Yeah.
often rejected.
Right. If I said, hey, listen, if it were me doing it, I'd have to get it done on Monday, first draft, Wednesday, second draft, Thursday, finalize, and save, print, whatever I need to do for the presentation. And he'd be like, whatever, that's your way. In
I,
fact, he has said stuff like that. to me.
I
So I
could
know,
see that.
and so I've known now not to say those things because it
I
just doesn't
had
matter.
I had a recent interview, and I'm in space which one it was, but we were talking about how we were all initially hunter-gatherers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a book on learning for kids and kids having to play.
Mm-hmm.
And as hunter-gatherer societies, when we study what's left of them, hunter-gatherer societies never tell the kids what to do. It's a learning from day one.
Mm.
And even if it's, I think we joked about this before, playing with machetes and matches, they keep the poison darts away. But the machetes and matches they let them play with because they cut themselves, they learn. They burn themselves, they learn. It's an absolute insult in a hunter-gatherer society to think you're good enough that you can show somebody else what to do or tell somebody else what to
Wow,
do.
that's interesting. I just
And
did
that's our
this.
wiring.
Yeah, I just did this interview. In fact, they say this exact same with Kate Sukal, who
Mhm.
is a book. She wrote a book on risk and how we process risk to make decisions. And she said that during the remodeling process for teens, there's a ton of stuff that happens in actually throughout your childhood, but mostly in your teens, and then there's another period earlier than that. But your brain is getting rewired, and it's actually through experiences, lots and lots of experiences, that you understand your own personal boundaries and where you can navigate, and that helps you make better independent decisions. Because without your own kind of own model and decision making and risk parameters, it's really hard for you to decide those kinds of things.
Yeah, going back to the you're talking about mini milestones. It's actually a term that I use. I have a win strategy. What is next? What's next?
Right.
And if you can determine what's next, you keep on taking actionable step and taking actionable step, and you move your way to your goal. You don't get stuck in, well, I don't know what's coming, or out of sight, out of mind, because you haven't determined that next actionable. But taking it to teens, you need to be able to have a map, your own individual map of a project. And if you're given a map of somebody else's life, the parent telling you what to do, well, it's sort of like having a GPS that tells you where to go. You could not get there without the GPS anymore because you haven't built a map in your head.
Yeah, and actually, what's interesting about that, we have a societal issue now because during my parenting reign, I have two teens, so does my parenting reign.
And
Um,
you are pulling back, admittedly pulling back from your parenting
I
reign,
am
putting down the staff on
I
occasion.
am, and it's really hard, but and I only do that because I've actually seen the results of being a helicopter parent, and when you're
Mhm.
doing everything for your child, then they get into work environments and they haven't actually built up those foundations that you're talking about where they actually have their own decision making model built into their head based on their own experiences because their parents are organizing their lives, taking them to soccer, then driving them to, kung fu, and then taking them to band practice. And so they never really have to actually organize their lives. And so when they get into work environments, they have a really hard time organizing their lives around work projects and organizing generally because they never had any experience doing. So it takes them a little bit of time, I think, to get online because they never had those experiences. So
So, from a societal perspective, are you saying that that is a society we have a hard time because we're constantly hovering and we need to pull back the helicopters a little
yeah,
bit?
like I think the people in my parenting reign need to actually have have. What's really hard is at the time when they're maybe at the time when you recognize this. For me, at least, it's a little bit late in the game, so the consequences are great. So, I started letting go probably sophomore year of my son's high school, and I
Mhm.
wish I had done it a little bit earlier. Like my younger one, I'm actually letting go, and I think it will be better. But it was a little bit too late for my sophomore, because now when he makes mistakes, they have like huge repercussions, right? So if he forgets to go to the SAT or ACT or screws up on a test or decides to go out with his friends the night before, like, wow, you know, he's learning how to come online and develop his own decision making model, and they're huge consequences. Um, but anyways, I'm curious for you because since you're more of a, I don't know, do you feel like you're more of a perceiver like my husband, or the more want freedom, or are you more like me, like judging and kind of wanting to like have structure, efficiency?
I want it all, CJ.
So are you
I
literally
want to have
in between the two?
Well, and I vacillate from project to project. I could be very different.
Hmm.
If I'm writing, I don't want an outline. Keep that outline as far away from me as possible.
Interesting.
If I'm preparing for a show, give me the outline, make it as structured as possible. So I'm kind of this amoeba depending on the situation and what the need is. I do like a sense of structure in place. In fact, the more routine I can build in, the better. Even though that routine, I want to have um, squishy space in there.
Right. You have freedom built into your schedule, I know.
Yes, freedom built into the schedule, which is very important. But then on top of that, I want every single thing that I can to have its own time slot, to have its own location. Years ago, I took a desk, wish I still had that desk, and I outlined where the stapler would go on the desk with it
Oh
was a
my
wooden
gosh.
desk. And I took a Sharpie where the stapler would go, where the tape would go, where everything would go. And then you look at desk and if there's an outline for a dead stapler, the stapler's not on your desk. You have a place for it. It seems neurotic, but you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And so everything that I build into my routine, I don't ever have to worry about.
Right.
It's the nebulous things that I'm not sure where to put them or haven't built that structure that always spin out, which lead me to know I need more structure there. But at the same time, I need to have that decompressed time and decompressed space. Or else, if everything's structured, when do you have time to be creative or to ask the big questions or to step back from the project? If it's from one project to the next project to the next project, where is the me time to see what's going on?
Well, to me, it seems like you're very structure oriented because if you actually have an outline for your stapler, I think you're more on
I
the.
wish I still did.
I think that's more of a structure. You're more oriented towards structure.
And
So,
Jessica would say the opposite. She would say, except for his structure time, he's all over the place.
oh, interesting. Wow.
So
So you're literally
some
between.
saves structure, but doesn't always put enough of the structure in place.
Hmm. Because what I found are for people who are in the freedom and don't like structure, the only because I get phone calls from them when when I do coaching and they say, you know what, none of these things work. I've read the Getting Things Done. I've read this book. I've read that book. I've tried all these things. I've tried putting things in my calendar. It just doesn't work. And I was like, okay, well, how do you get things done? And I literally map out their strategies for how they naturally get things done. And then I literally have a map of their own reality and their processes. Like, when's the last time you got something done? And tell me literally what did you do from step one all the way to step, completion. And then I map out, okay, this is how you naturally work. And I map out like step one is like you have some creative time and you take a walk. And then step two is you basically have a cup of coffee. I mean, it gets down. So what does that cup of coffee do? Well, that makes me feel grounded. Okay, so the step two is you get grounded. Step three, so that they don't have to have coffee each time, right? It's like you accomplish a goal of getting grounded. And then the third one is write a draft. But whatever it is, I literally map it out at the higher level so that they have freedom to, and if their first step is get into nature, they have freedom to do it in any way they want, which is to either go for swimming in a lake or walking or, running or whatever they want. Um, and that's the only thing that I have found for people who are way on the spectrum of not wanting to have any
The,
controls whatsoever.
the question I have, and with people who I've worked with in a similar situation, is anxiety levels. Oftentimes, when people say, I want complete freedom, they don't get the things done that they want to get done,
Hmm.
or they're pulling the power all nighter or all weaker in a state of complete frenzy trying to get it done because they didn't have a few safeguards in place.
But they're fine with it. Do they ever go, I regret that? I've never heard anyone say I've regretted it.
That's when they call me for coaching.
Oh, I see.
And they say, Michael, how do I actually get it done? And I say, well, it's time we're going to have to implement some structure in place, but let's work with your natural free flowing
Hmm.
style so that the style doesn't feel like it's crimping your style, but accentuating style. You want all this creativity and free time. Let's see where that goes.
Great.
And then maybe it's time that we put a little focused effort after that. And so there's a natural ebb and flow to it. But without that, it's you may come up with 1,000 great ideas, but have no way to harness them.
Right. Yeah.
And go for it.
No, I think you're right. There's either a self-imposed structure based on your natural, and the only other thing that I've seen that works is pairing yourself with a work associate or a person in your life that has that structure, that, like my husband and myself, where that person's like, okay, and there's like a yin and yang thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're actually talking about getting things done, but there's also a very different way of getting things done that my husband has that I need sometimes. And so he kind of reminds me to, like, why don't you take a break? Or, you know what, why don't you explore some of these other things? Like, he's the one who kind of forces me to stop going in a line and see the rest of the world. So I think it's a balance of the two, I think. They both have merits for sure.
Oh, I would agree completely. And whether
pairing yourself. That's the only point. Sorry.
Yeah, oh no, I love it. Whether it's getting a coach and have a professional pairing, whether it's having a friend, I call it, I still from coaching in my college days, I call it getting a study buddy.
Right.
And just having somebody sitting next to you, so to speak, to study enforces you'll get things done. And you may need in your life having that anchor to help ensure that you get things done if you're the type that, and I've traditionally, when I worked with college students, it was those with ADHD tendencies or other learning disabilities who were more on the natural hunter rather than gatherer side of things. Mm-hmm. And needing that person to check in with to help balance or help ground them.
Right, so you want to balance with those two. What's a hunter versus a gatherer?
A hunter is somebody that's continuously scanning the horizon, and that horizon could be external, literally what's going on outside the window. Oh, hey, there are mowers down there. Let me stare at the mowers while we're doing it. Right. Or it could be internal, and internal could be, oh, I've got this idea. I've got that idea. And what about this? And what about that? And that's more the hunter style, always scanning, always looking. Gatherer style is more of the farmer, somebody who can take their time, methodically do something, take that one single step in front of the next, and do things out of repetition. We need both in life. We need both in ourselves.
Right.
So hunter-gatherer has the challenge of just too much input barfing all over themselves, without any structure to do anything with it. And the gatherer, the agricultural specialist, is great at farming and that more linear thinking approach, but doesn't often have the chance or avail themselves of the opportunity, it's not the wiring, to step back and really look big picture holistically at everything that's going on.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, got it. So that's basically the model that you think about when you're. Do you think about that when you're actually working as a hunter-gatherer model?
Sometimes I look at people. I've gotten away from a Myers-Briggs kind of looking at where people fall, because in my life I have shifted so much that I'm concerned if I go there, for me, I'm going to end up pigeonholing somebody because my categorization, I'll judge them too much and pigeonhole them, and then I don't give them the opportunity to blossom. Because I switched from such a neurotic squirrel on crack, I cannot even begin to, hey everybody, this will be Inspire Nation, we're going to talk about this today, we're going to talk about that today, hey, I've got red chili pepper over here, look at the lawnmowers outside, wow, is that a sun, that's a hawk, woohoo! Oh my God. And now, and even the wiring of my mind, before, I need the loud music, let's crank it up, let's do this, let's get there.
Right.
And now, I still like to drive fast on occasion, but I'm not going to be the fastest guy on the road.
Right.
And I'm probably not going to have any music on because I just want to enjoy the silence. Rather than taking all the input and give me all the input you can right now because I don't want to think about myself and my life.
Wow, interesting.
And so there's been so much rewiring that's going on. I had on a guest yesterday. Um, Slips my mind. Um, Guest yesterday, we were talking about, don't let that slip my mind as well. Professor, Harvard professor, Brian, I'll come up with his name after the show. He has an amazing TED Talk on this as well. It'll be in the show notes, though, if anybody goes to the show notes. And he was talking about Bionetics. And we were talking about just this, Myers-Briggs type and everything of the sort. And he said, if you had asked me about it 10 years ago, I would have said that the Bionetics component, the genetic component, so to speak, of a person's makeup, that's firmly fixed. If you asked me when I started this book, I was starting to get a little bit looser on that. And now he says, I think it's all up for grabs. It's completely changeable over time. And even Myers-Briggs, it may be changeable from the time you take the test to the next time you take the test. So when I look at people, I'm trying not to categorize. We all do it. It's our nature. It's the way we think. Safe, not safe. Beautiful, not beautiful. Dateable, not dateable.
Right.
But I'm really, just from my personal experience, how much can I amoeba-size this person?
Right. Actually, just to be fair, because I don't want to bash Myers-Briggs at all, because what they say is you actually have a natural tendency. It doesn't say that you'll be at that fixed point forever. You have a natural tendency for one spectrum or the other, right? And so I think that if you look at Jungian kind of psychology, is that they say that it's really all about taking all those unclaimed parts of yourself. So let's say this is where your natural state is, and this is an unclaimed part of yourself. It's all about like taking all those parts of yourself and I would say getting back to balance so that you're actually wholly in balance with both of these things. And so if there is a goal at all in this thing, it's about being a balance of these two things. And if you're naturally this way or that way, it's kind of its nature, and it's not a problem. I don't see it as they both have. Because I struggled with this a lot. I literally, through focusing on this one topic and the way of thinking about it, I literally now see the balance of the two, and both of them are equally important. In fact, I'd like to do both. And so I think it is important, just to reemphasize, to not say that I'm a fixed point and I'll never change. I think that can be not helpful. And in fact, I'm kind of moving. I'm definitely here. Like if this is the midpoint, I'm all the way over here.
All the way to the right, yeah.
All the way to be judging, expectations cleared. And literally over time, I've been moving more towards the center.
I like it.
Out of intention, because I see the merits over here, and I see that from living a spiritual life, to be present. If you want to be present, it's in this area, not here.
Over on the other side.
It's on this side. Yeah, this is the midpoint. Presence, connection, seeing the magic in the universe. It's on this side, not on this side. So,
but if we don't have your special gifts, which may be, I'd actually argue they're on both sides of that fence.
I think there are gifts on this side too. You get massive amounts of stuff done, and you're super efficient. They're gifts on both sides.
Well, they're gifts specifically for you on both sides. So you may claim that you're way off on the right, or that you were, but honestly, when I met you, I thought you were the most woo-woo person out there.
Oh, really?
So you have successfully balanced this in a sense, even though there may be an internal struggle that tries to throw you all to one side versus the other. You're making me think this. I don't want to tangent us too much, or Ayurveda and the doshas and Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and what is your constitutional type? What is your mind-body type?
What are you? I'm Pitta Vata. You've got to be Pitta Vata.
I'm at this moment, and it's depending on the test, it seems to vacillate. Vata Pitta, just slightly more on the Vata side.
Yeah.
And you can see that in the winter as I'm going.
Yeah, I'm actually Vata Pitta too, air and then fire.
Exactly. So that to a certain extent is malleable as well. And the best we can do with our body mind types, and I don't want to blow us out too much for people who are listening to this and wondering what these words mean. It's kind of a constitution. Are you a light and airy person or windy nature person? Are you somebody who's more grounded nature? And so these are
which is kosha.
yeah, or are you more of a fire person, which
Right,
is
pitta.
a pitta? And there's a balance between this. What we look for is to get to that center place is how do we bring everything in balance? And then you're kind of a mishmash of all of it.
Right.
I think that bringing that back full circle to getting things done, it's when we're the mishmash, not when we're the most hyper creative, not when we're the most hyper organized, but when we allow ourselves to be somewhat in the middle or help rein ourselves in to, maybe we can call it a sweet spot.
Right. Like you were saying, the 100 times a zero is zero. Like you're better to have 50-50, a combination of those two things. And if you're not any of those things, that's fine too. Like there are other ways of compensating, right? But to find the other side of where you sit, where you naturally sit and understand and embrace and move to the other direction and find some balance of the two. I think at least that's where I'm arriving at, and I've actually really enjoyed it. And it takes a lot of work to get there because you have to go against your natural grain, right? If you're naturally here, it takes effort and energy and intention to move over to the other side. And so you just have to decide, I think, whether that's something you want or just, date someone who is the opposite, and then you'll get closer.
And the challenge with Jessica and myself is we both err more typically on that creative side of things.
Okay.
And so now that we're doing multiple projects, as we're getting our podcast launch accelerator together, it becomes more of all right, we're going to have to put some more serious project management into place and put some more structure in here in order to get this done. So how do we put the structure in? I joked earlier in the show about the power of carrots. I like having carrots for ourselves. Frequent rewards for yourself.
Right.
Not you'll get rewarded Friday or you'll get rewarded a month from now.
What's your example of a reward for you?
Well, yesterday was the most basic and beautiful reward of them all. Michael, you don't get to go out first thing in the morning to play, which is on my schedule. That makes me feel good. But we're really front-loading the day today. But we get through everything, and we'll take you to the lake.
Ah, so that's the Lake Where's the Lake? Yay!
Well, the Lake Where's the Lake, we're trying to figure out where to move, and it's going back and forth between lake and mountain, and right now we're trying to find if there's a sweet spot lake out there, because whenever we go, we realize just how much that water is cooling the fire and helping us bring more balance in. And so it's having that daily carrot for yourself, some sort of reward, not a food reward, that gets you into trouble, but having something that you do for yourself to take care of yourself allows you to navigate I really don't like this additional structure I'm having right here, but if I do that, I get this playtime, or I get something over here for myself.
Actually, there's two things. It's not only the reward, but what I'm also hearing that I think is really important that I don't think people really recognize is that we have our inner nature, right? So you actually may be more pitta, vata, or vata pitta. And so water would be a very grounding thing for you. And so it's like, how do I actually find water? So it's actually environmental as well. Ayurvedic is a lot about eating certain things and having your body go through various treatments so that you achieve balance. But I've literally talked to Sandra Ingerman, who is a shaman, and she literally goes to a place and she does a shamanic experience where she sees whether that environment actually resonates with her soul. And so I think when I don't know what she's doing, but my guess is when she's doing that, and she lives in the mountains, when she's doing that environment, like water, is either a balancing thing or it's a reinforcing thing. So I actually think I hadn't thought about that, but that may be one of the things that if you are kind of more flowy, being in like maybe a contained space, like mountains would be more, kosha kind of, sticking you in a place. But I wonder whether environment is actually super important too, because you've been telling me like Hawaii was not a good environment for getting stuff done.
Well, and we watch our friends on Maui and how they struggle.
Yeah.
And Maui is just a beautiful place, but for most people, it's a great place to visit, recharge, or discharge,
Right.
and then
To
get the heck
flow,
off.
right? Yeah, to
Yeah,
flow.
it's when you go to this place where time has kind of a different etheric meaning to it, or ephemeral meaning to it, where everything kind of doesn't have this structure and goes by these natural ebbs and flows of the tide, that you kind of get sucked down into it. And you'll literally watch, and I'm not picking on Maui, it's an amazing, amazing place, but for a large number of people, nothing gets done, and day after day, month after month, and because it's near the equator, you don't even realize year after year goes by, and you're lost because there aren't cycles of the day or cycles of the season, or of the year, to enforce that structure.
Yeah, and I
It
think I think
doesn't
it's
have that
it's
balance.
almost like a frame of reference because I think that if you think about life, it depends on how you're defining what your purpose of life is.
Extremely.
If your purpose of life is to have experiences and understand the nature of reality and navigate the world and experience the world, then they are getting something done, right? If you
But you
if
need to be careful there, because
Yeah,
yes, and we know some amazing, beautiful people, whether spiritual, whether farmers, shamans on the island, and that is essential for their path.
right. Yes, but if you're about like publishing a radio show and doing that every week and getting stuff like that's probably not as of a conducive environment. But if your goal in life is to navigate and experience and be present, it's probably better. So it kind of just depends on what your goals are in life and whether that environment supports it. Like whether the kind of mountain, which is more kosha, is like supportive. Both of them are balancing that kind of air, right? And then water, but water has kind of a more intuitive flowing thing, whereas a mountain doesn't have it. Do you know what I mean? So it seems like almost like what would be more supportive to your goals and your constitution.
It's fun because Jessica and I were talking about lakes versus oceans.
Yeah.
And,
Oh,
and when you talk about your environment, and environment isn't just, environment can be your office. What is your office environment like? It can even be what your bedroom's like. We
right,
talked about decluttering magic.
right.
We got a lot of stuff out of the bedroom, and suddenly we were sleeping better.
Wow.
That's the change in the energy and environment. But lakes versus oceans, oceans are kind of alive. They're more full on. And it
Yeah.
even depends where in the ocean. For instance, my favorite bit of ocean in the world is Naples, Florida. It's
Mm.
flat, it's placid, the water ain't doing almost anything. There's occasional dorsal fin that comes up, that's a dolphin,
Right.
and it's just peace.
Uh,
On the other hand, swimming in, well, I grew up outside of Gloucester, Massachusetts,
right.
really alive ocean of the North Atlantic. That didn't seem like much fun. Throw me in a lake. Take me out to one side of Maui where the water is nice and quiet in the summertime.
I'm
Take me out to
having
the same place where it's got 7 foot waves because it's surfing season. It's so, we don't realize how much our bodies are in sync with our environment or
Yeah.
affected by it. You're
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Well, it's funny because I actually have exactly the opposite reaction. Like when I go to a lake, I'm like, this feels like death. It's a dark pool of darkness and unknownness, and going to the ocean is like fire and like excitement and bubbly and like who knows where the wave's gonna take me. Like, yeah.
And that gets to the conversation I had yesterday on introverts and extroverts,
Hmm.
and the general box that these fell into is extroverts want more stimulus to bring them up to baseline.
Yes.
Introverts want less stimulus to bring them to baseline. And I, at this point in life, I have so much going on with the show, so much continuous stimulus that I want the least. If you say roller coaster or just lay down on the ground. I'm like, and they both cost the same. I'm buying my ticket for lay down on the ground.
For me, I'm actually very extroverted. So, but I reach my extroversion limit, and then I need to go introverted. So I actually have just like a little meter, and then it's like, okay, now I have to go back down. Like there's some place in between. I think for me, that's funny that you have that. All right. So what are shrinking bicycles and musical chair?
So those are two different things. Shrinking bicycles, when we're talking about getting things done, I've been working step by step on my posture this year because
Hmm.
I've never spent this much desk time in my life. And so I was starting to curl forward like a turtle for the
Right. Yeah.
show.
Yep.
And so now I'm sitting much taller.
Hmm.
I feel the tallest that I've ever been. People have been commenting, Michael, did you grow? And at 46, I say, sure. And this time I could say, not in my waistline. So, it's a step-by-step process of what I'm calling unstacking the back. And I'm
Hmm.
getting a little taller and a little taller and a little taller. And guess what? My custom bicycle that I have loved and loved and loved for years is now officially way too darn short for me. So
Whoa.
bike is literally, I'm towering over the front end because I'm no longer curled in like a turtle. And each
Wow.
time I get on my bike, it's getting smaller
You
and
can't move the
smaller.
seat back?
The seat is all the way back.
Oh
Um,
man.
the longest stem, non-custom stem that you can get on this thing. The weight balance is now wiggy weird because I'm towering over the front end of it.
Wow.
And it's just as I'm working to it's this step by step process of what pieces do I have in place to notice things. Then I've got
Hmm.
the study buddy, Jessica, you're curling forward. No, I'm not.
Yeah, that's good. I love that.
and
Wow.
and swimming has been a huge piece of
Yeah,
that.
because there's a lot of this kind of movement, right? Is that
up
what you're saying?
up and tall, up and tall, and we do all these motions with us forward, curling forward. Even if, oh, I want to strengthen my core, I'm going to do crunches, I'm going to do sit-ups. It's always forward.
Yeah.
But it's rare that we do things behind us.
Right.
And in swimming, you have to keep your head back. You have
Right.
to bring your arms back
Yeah, probably if you're
behind.
doing backstroke, it probably you're like, whoa.
You have to get your arm up, get the elbow up
Right.
high
Yeah.
behind to bring it around.
Yeah, that like this movement is so like it almost feels unnatural to me. But when you're swimming, it's
It's
actually
crawl. It's a
yeah.
crawl. You're a baby doing the crawl.
Right. And think about like if you just do that motion, like think about all the muscles that it enacts that it's like it's your lower back, it's your arm muscle, it's like your sides, like everything. It's like the lateral side to side motion
Yeah.
that we don't do very much, I think, when you're like this, right? It's all forward.
Forward, yeah.
Yeah, so it's up and then lateral back and forth.
And it's also why it's good not just to get out of a chair, but if you get moving, do some exercises behind you. Do some motions, some not crunches, but
Like
reverses,
arch over a
things
ball,
like
that
that.
kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Just so that you balance, because you've been doing this all day, and so your muscle gets habituated to that. So kind of go on, like go backwards, or do that thing where you grab your hands in the back and do a chest
Perfect
opener.
example.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's shrinking bicycles. That's amazing. Musical chairs is the thing that you just
So
talked about, right?
musical chairs actually is we've switched our offices around. Jessica's got her own space now. I've got my office has moved into the studio, which is taking a little bit of getting used to. In fact, my workflow, still have my two computers, one that I record on, one that I edit on. You would think the workflow is the same, but having the geographic change in where the computers are actually throws my mind completely out of sync because I tag things in my head. This gets done not on this computer. I think this gets done in this room.
Oh, isn't that fascinating? So the environment really, that structure of the environment has really thrown you off.
It's both thrown me off and is conducive to its by changing the environment, it's making me look at my workflow and I'm starting to do some things backwards and finding they were more efficient that way. So basically, by shaking things up, by stirring them into that blender, Some of my ideas go back to baseline. Okay, this is what's worked for me. But I'm actually loose and light and free enough that I'm throwing out some of my ideas and coming up with better ways to get other things done.
Wow, interesting. So I think what that does to me is now, I mean, if you look at getting things done and all these kind of traditional things are about creating like structures like email and processes and things like that. And I think that the big takeaway for me from this show is how much environment, you know, switching your desk or being near a lake or those kinds of things. I don't think that there's a lot of people who talk about those kind of things. And I think that and then also figuring out what's natural and kind of shifting away from what's natural as a way of kind of, of gathering balance. That's what I'm getting from the show.
I like it, and it's making me think even more, both of decluttering and what can I do in my office space. And we're supposed to be only here for a few more months, so it is quote unquote temporary. But what can I do with my office space to help it to resonate more with me? We finally found some nice soothing music that works for our style. We don't need the upbeat stuff that's a little too much stimulation at this point.
Right.
I've been a big fan of water fountains in the past, and maybe I'll be going back to a water fountain. But what can I do to build my environment to make me more comfortable with my nature? My nature wants to go run outside and play, but so that it feels less like a cell that's holding me in or a cubicle that's holding me in, and more like it's a term I wrote about in an article for an ADD magazine many years ago, how to have our own personal Zen zone.
Yeah, you know what this is making me think about is feng shui. Because so feng
Yeah,
shui says that there's a natural energy to the room and the movement of energy. So actually, how can you compose your environment where you're working so it has that natural balance in it so that when you're within that environment, it doesn't feel like a prison but feels balanced. That's what it sounds like is that you're trying to do is create feng shui. And all that clutter is energy sucking. So when you took that
absolutely.
out of your room, right, you slept well. I think it's great. Yeah.
So yeah, last thing that I have to cover is the magic power of hammocks.
Mm-hmm.
And Jessica bought this hammock this summer. We set it up for the first time at a it's this little camping hammock, and it'll be in the show notes what kind of hammock it is. I don't recall. She purchased it. It's kind of like a parachutey material, very light. We set it up the first time at the town square where they have the musical concerts every Saturday night. She took it to the lake yesterday, and so my big thing was swimming. Hers was kicking back on the hammock. It's a double though. It fits
Yeah.
both of us.
Yeah, sweet.
And and giving yourself that hammock time. It may be the reverse. You may need the roller coaster time. In which case take the roller coaster time. But it's kind of cool. She can take it with her and out in nature, set this thing up any place she wants, and get a little power relaxation time.
Right, and you can wash it too, right? Because it's like
Oh
made
yeah.
out of like, whereas like the rope is kind of like icky after a little bit, the hammock.
Yeah, this is parachute. What would it be? Nylon cords, not cords. Completely washable. Everything's
I
completely.
love it. Love it. Okay, any other tips before we log off?
I'd go back to the win. What is next?
Hmm.
Look at each of your top projects that you have in your life. Everything, like we were talking about, everything is a project. Your son is a project. Heck, even coming up with a menu if you're trying to improve your health, that's a project. Just making dinner is a project.
Right.
And for your top projects, ask yourself, what is next? But
Hmm.
also start to think about maybe one of the things that is next is your life plan.
Hmm.
And that can be a huge, so important project. And what is next can be hammock time, lake time,
Hmm.
roller coaster time, time to take yourself away from it all so that you can start to ask, what is next?
Yes, love it. Love it. That's a great tip.
Anything from yourself?
Nope, I just love your last tip, so I want to end on that one. That's a good one.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
CJ, for being here. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler and
CJ Lou.
saying, be well, have fun, Make sure to get a win by asking what is next and get that hammock and shine bright. Woo-hoo!
Woohoo!
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.